Okay, let's dive right in. We're about to tackle one of the biggest questions we face as humans, a question that really sits at the very core of our experience. It's this fundamental mystery that sooner or later we all have to confront. I mean, really, why? Why is there pain and stress and anxiety? Is it all just random, a roll of the cosmic dice? Or is it some kind of punishment? Well, according to the teachings we're digging into today, the answer to all of that is a pretty definitive no. See, what if suffering isn't arbitrary at all? What if it's a predictable process, a chain reaction with clear causes? Because if it has causes, and this is the important part, that means it also has an end. And that, right there, is a profoundly hopeful idea. So before we can even begin to talk about a solution, we have to get super clear on the problem itself. Let's really define what we mean by suffering in this context. Wow, okay, so this definition is incredibly comprehensive. It's not just about the big catastrophic stuff. It covers the entire arc of life, the stress of being born, of getting old, of getting sick, and of course of dying. But it's also all the mental anguish in between, the sorrow, the pain, the sadness. At its core, it's that fundamental dissatisfaction we feel when we're faced with a reality that is always, always changing. All right, so what's the technical name for this chain reaction? It's called dependent origination, and this is a core principle. The idea is that nothing exists in a vacuum. Everything arises in dependence on other factors. You can think of it as a kind of universal law of cause and effect. Now, pay really close attention to that phrase. Instigating activity. This is absolutely crucial. It tells us that suffering isn't just something that happens to us. No, it's an active process that we participate in, often without even realizing it. It's something we do, not just something we are. And that changes everything, doesn't it? Because if we help create it, we can also help stop. So how does this actually work in our day-to-day lives? Let's break down a simplified version of this chain reaction to see how a simple, everyday sensation can actually spiral into genuine suffering. Okay, so it starts with simple contact. Your eye sees something beautiful or your ear hears a song you love. As the texts say, contact is a condition for feeling. And boom, immediately a feeling arises, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. Now, if it's pleasant, we almost automatically move to the next link, craving. We want more of that feeling. And then comes grasping. We don't just want the feeling anymore. We start clinging to the source of the feeling, believing it can make us permanently happy. And what's the final link? You guessed it, suffering. Because that object, that sound, that person, it's going to change. It's going to disappear. And it's our grasping that causes the pain when it does. This right here is the critical point. It's not the pleasant feeling that's the problem. Not at all. It's the mental act of grasping, of clinging to it for dear life that powers this entire cycle. That's what keeps us trapped. So, if suffering is this chain reaction, like it's built, link by link, then the solution has to be, well, reversing the process, right? This is where the diagnosis turns into a prescription, and it's known as dependent cessation. And the logic here is just, it's beautiful. It's so simple. If one thing causes another, then removing the cause prevents the effect. If contact leads to feeling, which leads to craving, what happens if you just don't add the craving to the equation? The whole chain just stops, right there. And let's be super clear. This is about cessation, not destruction. You're not trying to destroy your feelings or avoid the world. You're simply stopping that instigating activity, that reactive craving and grasping. When you choose not to add fuel to the fire, the process that leads to suffering, it never even gets started. So what happens when this chain is finally broken? When the fuel of craving is no longer added to the fire, we arrive at the ultimate goal, the complete and total end of suffering, a state known as nibbana. The word literally means extinguishment or quenching, but it's not about extinguishing the self, it's about extinguishing the fires of greed, hatred, and delusion, the very things that cause all our suffering. It's described as this ultimate peace, a sanctuary from the heavy yoke of constant dissatisfaction. This quote just captures the feeling perfectly. If suffering, fueled by craving, is like having a constant burning fever, then nibbana is the state of finally being cooled and quenched. It's that profound and lasting peace that comes when all that inner turmoil has just ceased. And this image of a serpent shedding its skin, it's just brilliant. It perfectly captures that feeling of total freedom. It's a complete release from all the burdens and attachments, leaving behind this tight, worn-out skin that you just don't need anymore. The texts use so many powerful ways to describe this state. It's being fully awakened and unattached. It's going beyond desire itself. It means rebirth is ended because the causes for it have been completely dismantled. It is quite simply the ending of all the fetters that bind us to suffering. So ultimately, the biggest takeaway here is a message of profound hope. Suffering isn't a life sentence. It's not your destiny. It's a conditional process, a chain reaction. And because it's conditional, it can be undone. It has an end. And that leaves us with one last, very practical question. Looking at that chain, from contact to feeling to craving to grasping, which one of those links could you become a little more aware of in your own life today? Which link could you maybe begin to influence right here and right now? Because the answer to that, well, that could be the beginning of a profound change.